Good morning and welcome. Welcome to the 36th Annual College of Business and Economic Outlook Conference.
Jim Lundy, who's the founding president and CEO of Alliance Bank of Arizona.
Most of you that know me, I can even make an introduction that lasts long. But, a couple of things. We really are pleased to sponsor this year's Annual Economic Conference. I'm also glad that Elliot put up the 37th instead of the 36th, so I'm sure now we get to, for the same amount of money, we get 2 years sponsorship in a row. That's a great deal. We have been open. It'll be 10 years in February. As Dean Vince said, we're now the 10th largest bank in Arizona. And that's a great segue for me to now introduce our featured speaker, Robert Sarver. Robert, he's the CEO of Western Alliance Bancorp. He's my boss. He's a native Arizonan. I think many of you may know that. He was the founding organizer, the founding president of National Bank of Tucson. He became National Bank of Arizona in 1984 when he was 23 years old. Currently, Robert's on the board of directors of SkyWest Airlines, Meritage Homes. He knows a lot about the home building market. The Wild Foundation, the Sarver Heart Center. He's probably best known, though, to many of you here and to people around the state. He's the managing partner of the Phoenix Suns and also sits on the board of directors of the NBA. I'll tell you that he's much more of a hands-on banker than a lot of people would realize. He brings a real keen understanding of our business. I think from a market and customer perspective, from a sort of an operational employee perspective, and then he also has this perspective in the investment community, the regulatory perspective. So he really has a 360-degree view of banking and also how banking intersects with the economy.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. That was a nice introduction, Jim. Let's see, November is review time, allocated stock options, and everything else, so that was well done. Glad to be here with you folks. Elliot does a great job talking about all the economics and, outlining a lot of the key issues, both locally and nationally, and actually internationally, because we compete in an international market. For those of you that think that when you're educating your kids that they're competing against other kids in Arizona, they're competing against other kids in other states, they're not. They're competing against kids internationally. Same with business. With technology and everything, so much of our business and competition for jobs and employment is really at an international level. We kind of need to adjust our thinking that way. I wanted to share just a few thoughts about the banking industry and the economy, and then talk a little more about basketball, because whenever the subject says basketball and banking, everybody wants to talk more about basketball and banking. The fiscal cliff, when I walked in, that was kind of the first thing I saw. And that really concerns me, because when you look at things that are out there staring at us, we really can't control what's going to happen in the Middle East. We don't have a lot of control over that. We also don't have a lot of control over what's taking place in China, whether they're going to go into recession or not. We don't have a lot of control over Europe in the banking crisis, but we do have control over our own situation here in the United States and our own economy. So I think it's important that we really, hopefully, our government will work together to solve this crisis. I'm hoping that the president, now that he's not running for re-election again, will maybe be able to move a little more towards the center and do some things to help get this economy going and get headed in the right direction. I think he's going to want to will be concerned about his legacy. I think he's going to want to do the right thing. I think a big part of that legacy is going to be dependent upon how he handles the fiscal situation of this country. He's going to have to reach out to the middle, he's going to have to reach out to the Republicans, and they're going to have to get some business done. As Elliot says, we got a tough situation. We can't increase taxes enough to solve our problems. We can't cut expenses enough to solve our problems. We need to do a little bit of both, but we really need to grow the economy. And we need to install confidence in businesses. One of the slides up there talked about the all-time high levels of cash on balance sheets of businesses. That's not good. Ellie talked about uncertainty. Companies want to run projections. They want to run pro formas. They want to have business plans. uncertainty. How much is my health care going to cost? What are my tax rates? All these things cause problems. All these things inhibit businesses from making decisions. They inhibit companies from opening up new plants, new facilities, new stores, spending money on capital. So we need some certainty. We need our folks to work together. You know, unfortunately, politics is really frustrating. It seems like, you know, we don't have those old-time statesmen that could make deals. Remember Mo Udall, you know, was an example of a guy. He had firm convictions. He had strong beliefs in what he believed in, but he also could go behind closed doors and make a deal. We send too many people to Washington that have strong beliefs too far to the left, strong beliefs too far to the right, and made promises and made commitments, and they get themselves locked into a situation. Now, if we're running a business, and I've been there, and you guys have been there before too, you're running a business that's as upside down as this government, you don't say, I promise I won't do this, I promise I won't do that. What do? You sit around your management team and go, okay, everything's on the table. We're going to look at everything. We're open to everything. What do we need to do to solve our issues? Unfortunately, that's our problem. In Washington, we need to hopefully make some headway to get going in the right direction. Otherwise, our kids are in for really a rough go. In terms of the banking industry's been really tough. I'll share with you a cute story. 3 years ago, I go to Washington, and I'm lobbying for some small business lending things in Capitol. In the Capitol, and I'm with a gal who was the head of our state banking group. And walking up to the Capitol, and she runs into somebody she knows who's also, I guess, had just come from the Capitol, and that person says, oh, what are you guys doing? They go, well, we're coming up to lobby on some banking issues. This fellow says, oh man, I feel sorry for you guys. And when he left, I asked the gal with me, I said, well, what does that guy do? And she goes, oh, he's a tobacco lobbyist. And I thought to myself, when the tobacco lobbyists feel sorry for the banking lobbyists, you know where we're at. And unfortunately, we've been painted with a broad brush. Community banks like ours, with the money center banks, and really more specifically some of the investment banks and things that took the economy in the wrong direction. So I think one of the tough things for us as bankers too has been, you know, we pride ourselves in being involved in the community. We pride ourselves on being good corporate citizens. We pride ourselves in lending money to businesses, being good people, having honesty and integrity, and we've had a tough few years. I mean, we haven't been viewed as that recently, and that's been a little bit tough. I do, as I'm talking about banks, I do want to give a shout out to our group here, led by Sherry Slayton and Greg Sampson and Rob Gerlach. These guys have built a nice business here in Flagstaff. They do a great job. Jim Lundy used to practice law here in Flagstaff and was a banker here. And we have a good commitment to Flagstaff. We do good business here. We work with a lot of folks to hopefully help try to meet your needs and do a good job for you. You know, from a regulatory standpoint, the banking industry's changed a lot. It's been tough. The Dodd-Frank Act added 3,000 pages of new regulation, legislation covering our industry. Only 30% of that legislation last 18 months has been written into law. There's another 70% coming. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of unintended consequences of some of that law. So, you know, politicians and government work a little like we do too. We're emotional, right? So we kind of overreact both ways. Anybody driven a boat before without an autopilot? You ever find yourself, you go a little right, and you're too much right, then you go a little left, then you go a little right. Well, that's kind of what happens in business sometimes, and in government. And so, you know, banks and regulators were too loose and too liberal in good times, and then the pendulum swung too far, and in bad times, things got too tough, and we overreacted. And a lot of these overreactiveness created some legislation like the Dodd-Frank Act, which really put an undue burden on banks from a regulatory standpoint and had a major increase in capital requirements, which is a good idea, but probably should have done once the economy got a little better, not all put in place when the economy's tough. And so our industry's had a tough time. There's a lot of uncertainty in our industry. But you know, at the end of the day, I go back to, we have a sign in the locker room, and now I'm going to go back to the Suns a little bit. Actually, I got 2 dots on my head here from, I was in our locker room this morning earlier in Phoenix. We're constantly working on analytics and things we can do to improve as an organization, and we have a company right now that's doing some brain mapping to try to help produce skills to help our players think better. And so I was one of the first guinea pigs, so I had my brain mapped today for 40 minutes where I had to do these little exercises, and they had these like electrode things sticking on my head. But speaking of a tough economy, and speaking of business being tough, and talking about what Elliot said, where it's a slow recovery, and you know what? Slow times are difficult. You know, it's one thing to go through a tough year. It's one thing to go through a recession for a couple of years. But when you're in a tough market, a tough economy for multiple years, that really wears on you. And not only does it wear on you, but it wears on the people that work for you, probably more than you. And so I go back to when I walked out of that locker room today, we have a big sign right at the front door. It says, "No excuses." And at the end of the day, that's why we try to tell our guys, no excuses. And I think that's part of what got Alliance Bank of Arizona and Western Alliance Bank through these tough times. Yeah, we were a little better credit. Yeah, we foresaw the economy getting worse a little sooner. Yeah, we went out early. We're proactive. We raised a bunch of capital. Yeah, we didn't sit with our heads stuck in the ground talking about how bad things were. We actually put a smile on our face and had guys go out and do business and call in customers, but no excuses. We have another sign in our basketball management office that says, "Hope is not a plan." You have to have a plan. You got to execute. But to me, no excuses is real important, because a big part of getting through a tough cycle and getting your company doing well is for you to have the right mindset. Okay? Passion, heart, and your mindset can conquer a lot of problems when times are tough. And talking about basketball, I just wanted to share with you something else. So you come out of the locker room, you see big signs that says no excuses. And then when you get out of the locker room, we have a big wall that the players see every day. And we talk about what we call the 5 Ps. Okay? The 5 Ps. The Ps are pride, preparation, perseverance, poise. And then if you do all those right, you get performance, which is the 5th P. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about those 5 Ps and kind of what they mean from a basketball standpoint, and maybe how they can impact you a little bit, because I think you're getting plenty of information on what's going on, so I'm just going to kind of go off subject a little bit with something that maybe you can take home with you and hopefully add a little value as you navigate this economy. You know, the first is pride. We want players that want to play in Phoenix. We want players that when they put a Phoenix Suns jersey on, they have pride. Our bankers, I know when they go out and call on customers, and Sherry's out there, she's prideful that she works for Alliance Bank of Arizona. You have to have pride in your organization you work for. You have to have pride in the job you do. That's why one of the reasons I tell young kids it's so important to pick a job and pick a line of business that you have a passion for, that you're interested in, because you have to have pride in what you do. If you don't take pride in what you do, you're not going to be successful. Our players, we want to take enormous pride in what they do, both on the court and off the court. Okay? And off the court's getting a lot more interesting. Social media. Okay? Players now view themselves more as entertainers. They view themselves more as of a brand than they do just athletes. 20 years ago, players just came to play basketball and try to win basketball games. Now they view themselves as a brand. And part of that has to do with how they use social media, how many Twitter followers they have, what they're doing on Facebook, you know, their whole brand. And part of that has been really helpful for us as a league, because our players are much more conscious of what they do off the court and how they represent their brand. They're more cautious about doing things they shouldn't do because of that brand. Now, one of the negatives is that a lot of things you wish would stay within your company or within the locker room sometimes gets out because of social media. But I think social media has played a big part in helping professional athletes really manage their brand, and for us, it's good because, you know, we want our guys to take pride in what they do and show it, you know, every day, both on and off the court. Preparation is really probably the most important, and that's for all of us. And, you know, it's easy to get prepared for the big moments. It's easy to be prepared for the big deal. It's easy to be prepared for the big sales call. But being prepared every day for everything you do, that takes a lot more work. And that's what we preach with our players. Okay? And, you know, preparation takes a lot of different ways. In basketball, we go through an elaborate process to educate our players on, for example, who they're going to play against, who they're going to guard that night. okay? And some of the players take a lot of pride in making sure they know who they're going to play, what their tendencies are, what they're like. And when the whistle blows and that tip starts, they're able to defend and guard that player because they're very well prepared. Versus waiting a quarter or quarter and a half to get the feel for the player. And then sometimes in professional sports, once that player starts hitting shots and you're not on them real well, that basket seems as big of an ocean to them and you can't stop it. So we send out detailed information to our players before every game on their iPad, showing them tape of who they're playing and exactly what their tendencies are, so they know how to guard someone. You know, if you're guarding Dirk Nowitzki, you got to know, don't go for the pump fake. He's going to pump fake every time, and if you go for it, you're going to foul him. He's going to get the free throw. You can't block his shot anyway. He's 7 foot tall. He shoots the ball up here. If you're playing Al Jefferson, for example, who's the center for the Utah Jazz, he is always going to end up going back right with the right hand. He never will shoot with the left hand. He'll always fake left. He'll never shoot with the left hand. If you're guarding LeBron or Monte Ellis, you're going to know most of the time he goes left, he's going to pull up for a jump shot. Most of the time he goes right, he's going to the basket. Now, but the only guy you can't prepare for is Kobe, because Kobe can do everything. And he never has a rhyme or reason to it. He can go left, he can go right. He can post up, he can face up. But almost every player has a lot of tendencies. And if you're prepared, you can be prepared to guard. Our coaches do a lot of preparation, hours and hours before every game. We have one coach that's assigned to every single team to prepare for who we're playing. We also do a tremendous amount of analytics to help our coaches decide how best players play together. Basketball's pretty tricky. You know, you got 5 players, but how they play together, you don't know. We now have a PhD economist and mathematician PhD on our staff. We got a person with a master's degree from MIT in statistics. We got 4 attorneys who actually work in basketball. And we're hiring 2 more analytics people to work with the analytics of basketball to try to have independent information statistics that show us how players perform better under different circumstances. We have an eye doctor who specializes in psychology, who does a tremendous amount of work. My wife's seen some of the exercises and things, to sit down with players to figure out whether, is this player best taught by explaining something to him? Is it best taught on paper, or is it best taught showing them? Do they respond better with their ears, with their eyes, or do you have to walk them through things? We've got a new program we just installed where we have 12 cameras around the arena that measures every movement of every player during every practice and every game. And we have baseline physical statistics on player, and during the game and in practice we can tell exactly how much energy they're expending, what their heart rate energy, how much blood flow, how much lung capacity, and what percentage of effort they're expending at every single play. It used to be that you could only measure statistics in basketball by someone sitting down, watching the game, and checking, okay, got a rebound, got a block, got this, got an assist, you know, committed a foul. But now we can measure analytics and statistics by what's shown on video. And it's much, much up here. But it all comes down to preparation. Now sometimes not everybody believes in preparation. One Shaquille O'Neal, for example, when he played for us, when they sit down and have the meetings to determine, are you ready to guard your man? You have the big mans and the little guys go in different rooms. The coach would sit down and go, okay, Shaq, we're playing the Lakers tonight. You got Andrew Bynum. Tell me how you're going to play him. Shaq would go, barbecue chicken. What? Barbecue chicken. Come on, Shaq. 27,422. Go to the next game. Okay, we're playing Orlando. You got Dwight Howard. How are you going to guard him? Fried chicken. Shaq, how are you going to guard him? Fried chicken, coach. 27,455. I finally asked Bill, Shaq, what is 20,455? That's how many points I've scored in my career. I know how to guard him. Okay, Shaq. Okay, next game, Shaq. We got Yao Ming. How are you going to guard him? Kung Pao chicken. So not everybody followed exactly what we tried to teach them. The next thing we try to talk about, the third P, is poise. You know, how do you handle yourself under pressure? How do you perform under pressure? How do you perform when the chips are down? You know, we all run into that. You know, it's, you know, you're going to blame your teammate, you can do this, you can do that. You know, how are you going to be when things are against you? And how are you going to represent our organization? And are you going to keep your voice? You know, we said no excuses. You know, you get a few bad calls, is that going to get you upset? Is that going to throw you off your game? You know, we got players that, you know, you'll play against and you can kind of get in their head a little bit. You can throw them off their game. You know, young kid for Sacramento, Cousins, extremely talented, but when he loses his temper, his game falls apart. You know, teaching boys. I think you got to teach that to people that work for you too. You know, especially in tough times. Tough to go through tough times, but you got to have boys. And the thing is, when you're running a business or managing a company, and the statistics aren't going your way, and business isn't so good, it hasn't rebounded as quick, and times are tough, the employees are going to look to you to see whether they should have boys or not. And if you don't have boys, they're not going to have boys. That's the same thing with captains of the basketball team. They're going to look to the best player on the team and see how they react, and then decide, okay, how should I react? If the coach and the best player don't have boys, players aren't going to have boys. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes that happens. Last night, for example, you know, we got a lot of new guys. We're trying to orchestrate people together. We were, you know, playing good most of the game, and then the other team went on a 12-0 run, and it looked like maybe what was going to happen last night would happen to us in Orlando on the road. We had a nice lead and we fell apart, but we didn't. We kept our poise. We bounced back. We ended up winning the game. It's not easy when things are going against you to keep your poise. Perseverance, man. This one is really good. Now, basketball is a little different in business. In business, you get these cycles, and they'll go maybe for 6 months or a year, or you know, maybe 5 years. Elliot talks about 10 years. I've said to people, when I die, my tombstone is going to have 10 years missing. It's going to say 1961 to 2005, then 2015 to whenever I die, because from a business standpoint, no one's going to know exactly what I accomplished for 10 years, because I've been working my ass off, but I don't seem to be getting too far forward. It has been a tough economic cycle. Very, very tough. Perseverance, man, you can't give up. One of the best stories I have about perseverance is we played the Lakers 6 years ago, and we're down 2-1 in the playoff series, best of 7. We're in Los Angeles, and the game comes down right to the end. Steve Nash makes a bonehead mistake, goes to the sideline with the ball. We're ahead 1 point with 2 seconds to go. He gets tied up for a jump ball. Jump ball gets tipped to Kobe. He goes down the court like he always does, makes a shot. We're down 3-1 in the series. We go in the locker room, put the play up on tape. Luke Walton standing 2 feet out of bounds for the jump ball. Should have been our ball. They shouldn't have won the game. We're down 3-1. Everyone's mother effing everything. People are pissed. I mean, you know, I'm white. You know, I mean, we're done. And Steve goes, listen, you guys, we got 5 minutes to get this out of our system. You got 5 minutes to complain about this game, whatever you want to complain about. After that, I don't want to hear one word about it. We're better than this team. We will beat them 3 games in a row, 1 at a time. I don't want to hear about this again. And sure enough, we came back and we won 3 games in a row. Now, when he said it, I didn't believe him. And I didn't think it was possible. But you have to have perseverance. The top performers can persevere tough droughts. One time the Phoenix Suns started out 0-13 and made it to the playoffs. I don't know if any of you remember that season. That was quite a while ago. But you got to have perseverance, and perseverance is real important whether you succeed or not. Listen, whether it's personal relationships or business or whatever, no one's performance goes like this. No one's career goes like this. No one's finances goes like this. It's all like this. You got to be able to persevere the tough times. And then finally, what we say to our players is that if you can get those 4 right, the 5th one, which is performance, comes easily. Now, we're in a business of professional sports where it's all about performance and it's all about results. It's different than a lot of businesses. In a lot of businesses, you can kind of think how you think you're doing, but in sports you can't, because your record's in the newspaper every day. And as the National Basketball Association, we haven't yet figured out where we can have 15 games one night and have 25 winners. So every night, half teams win and half teams lose. It really is tough. As a business person who's used to being right 8 or 9 out of 10 times, going into professional sports is tough, because everyone's managed to 500. And if you win 6.5 out of 10 games a year, you've done phenomenal. But that still means that 32 times a year during the season you went home and you lost. Okay? And so for us, it's all about performance. We measure performance at the bank too. We have a lot of measurement sticks. I'm a firm believer you can't manage what you can't measure. We try to measure everything. We try to hold everybody accountable. You know, in sports, you know, got 82 games, man. Those ups and downs come quick. One night you feel great. My wife knows this. Same in our household. One night you feel great. You know, we win, stop, get the kids ice cream, everything's fine, car got in front of me, no problem. Next night you lose, no, we're not going to ice cream, honking the horn, you know, ready to strangle everybody. And the tough thing about basketball is from one night to the next, it's almost like you could play 2 games, one Monday night, one Tuesday night. Both games could be identical. The players could all do the same. In one game, the last shot you make goes in, you win, everything's great. The next game, the last shot goes in, you lose, you start dissecting everything. Oh, we need to do this, we need to change this guy didn't do this guy didn't do that. It teaches you, and it's hard to do, that you really have to try to kind of be in the middle. You can't get too high when things are good and you're winning, and you can't get too low when things are bad. And when business is good, people think, hey, you're really smart. When business is bad, or you're losing, you're an idiot. The reality is, you're not as good as people think you are when things are good. You're not as bad as people think you are when bad. You're kind of in the middle, okay? And I think trying to stay in that middle helps you compete in business. It helps you compete in sports. If you get on the plane after a Phoenix Suns game, you cannot tell on the ride home whether the team won or lost. You cannot tell. It looks identical. Players have learned you got to move on. You can't dwell on what happened yesterday. You have to think about what's going to happen tomorrow. One of my favorite sayings is God put eyes in the front of our head to look forward, not to look backwards. And even though what you're looking forward to may not be the best, you know, you put your smile on your face and listen. Sometimes things are tough. I had times when, you know, we'd go to work, Jim and I go to work, and all I was doing was putting out fires. You know, 2-3 years ago. Sometimes there wasn't anything good at work. Sometimes the only thing I could do is go home at night, see my wife, see my kids, wake up the next day, it's a new day. That's the best you can do. Sometimes that's the best you can do. That's okay. There's always another day. There's always another opportunity. We like to say in a basketball season, it's a marathon, not a sprint, because there's 82 games. And I think what we're finding here with this economy is it's a marathon too. It's improving steadily. It's obviously a lot better than it was a couple years ago. We got a lot to go. We got a long way to go. Okay, but I think if you know, if you think of the 5 Ps and you think of some of the things to try to keep you a little level and you keep a good attitude, you got a good chance of persevering, a good chance of being successful, whatever you do. So anyway, I've gone probably way beyond what I was supposed to, but it's nice to be here. I came here the first time 21 years ago. My wife used to sell textbooks for Prentice Hall to universities. She covered Flagstaff. She said, you got to come up here. And we went and stayed at the Little America. And actually, when my kids were little, I went to Little America and thought shag carpet was the nicest place I've ever seen. We get the red shag carpet room down. And Flagstaff's a beautiful place. It's nice to be with you here, folks. And if you need to borrow any money, talk to Sherry, Jim, or myself. We're here to help you. Thanks.